one. So any public comment?
Uh, Yes, my name's Nick. I'm new to Hopkinton. I was just wondering if, I think we were talking a little bit about looking at the maps of the trails. And I was wondering if you guys would have any objection to me trying to get some of these trails on Apple Maps. They have a new trail subsystem that's fantastic. I don't know if you guys have ever talked about that. It's pretty new. But
So Apple Maps?
yeah, Apple Maps, they have a whole hiking section now. They just added it a couple months ago. For instance, where I came from in Johnstown, a lot of these trails were super well labeled, and you could even get walking directions. And it would take you all the way across town. And a lot of the trails around where I live, they're not on there. I was just wondering if it'd be okay if I tried to add them. So, okay with all of you? Or?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're looking at doing is coming up with sort of a townwide trail map, and we've got various iterations. One of the issues we ran into in the past was that, like OpenStreetMap and some of those show both trails on public land and private land, and we're, it just is what it is. But private land that somebody allows permission is one thing. Private land that people don't want you walking across is another. So we as a town committee can't really be putting, those kind of trails on.
I figured there was some kind of concerns like that. And then, the other, and I know I'm new to this group, but where we live, so I noticed there are a bunch of trails that are along Saddle Ridge Road. There are a lot of trails to the east of there.
Yeah. Go down to Saddle Hill. Oh, they're on
Trails. There's network trails up there, but then getting south to downtown Hopkinton, there's no real way to do that unless you're walking on Route 85.
Sure.
And neither of those roads they're pretty, I wouldn't want to walk with my kids on them, for sure. So I'm wondering if at some point, Freddie, you must keep it together. I was wondering at some point who I could talk to get some permission to work on the trail connecting those two areas. It's a complex project.
Yeah, a lot of that's DCR land, so
Okay.
the state is part, but that's actually, one of our issues is connectivity. Obviously, not next year or the year after, but a goal would be to connect Southport train station with downtown.
Yeah.
So, and there is actually a trail that goes on the old AT&T,
The pipeline trail.
yeah, but it goes through that. It gets pretty wet and there's a couple of big,
I've been
Channel,
I've been
yeah.
down that way.
Yeah.
It needs a couple of big bridges, right?
Yeah.
right.
I have no illusion that it would be a really complicated undertaking, but I was just wondering if I could get contact info for someone. Just
That would be us.
okay.
And we would work with
Okay.
you and then DCR on something like
Got it.
that. But that's a,
Very
as you say, it's a complicated and bigger project.
absolutely. And I apologize to bring it up. I apologize to bring it up the first time.
Don't apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It would be so cool if all those folks could walk to downtown Hopkinton.
Yeah.
That would be a game changer.
Have you, are you familiar with the Trails Book?
No, but I've heard of them.
You should
Get
make a connection, right? So
Yeah.
we could, make a connection with the Trails Book.
Club.com.
Okay.
Pretty easy. There's a monthly walk, guided walk, so you can explore new trails that
Okay.
haven't been on them or don't know about them. And there's also a work day once a month, volunteer work day.
that I'd love to find out that too.
Great. So if you go to that website, you can sign up for the mailing list or follow it on social media
Okay.
and keep bringing your input. This is great.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think this guy, I don't know how long it's gonna last, but.
Because it's really appreciated. You're more than
Yeah.
welcome. Just point time to listen in or.
Yeah.
Add your comments that we like it.
Yeah.
I think prioritizing, we're going through a process of looking at reorganizing, we're looking at holistically all the trails we have and prioritizing, public input is
Yeah, no,
only welcome, but desired.
thank you.
Yeah.
Chuck? Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, this comes under the public comment section, I hope.
Yes.
I was approached by Don Kaiser, who lives on Oakhurst, on the west side of the lake. Um, he's an avid hiker, and his wife is the trail steward for the Peppercorn Hill and Deneen area. But he was saying that he used to be able to walk along West Main across the causeway, staying on the lake side of the guardrail there, and to feel like he was walking safely. That area, and Don is otherwise occupied tonight, but I told him I would at least get his thought before you, because I understand you will be considering priorities and projects in your planning. What he would like to see is to get the brush that is grown up on the south side of the guardrail cleared out enough that that area would still be safely walkable. Because right now, if someone wants to walk from Oakhurst to, say, Downey, they're where the guardrails are, they're really squeezed against the traffic. So I told him I would mention this. This is the kind of thing that might be something for a trail workday, weather permitting and priorities permitting. But it does relate to neighborhood connectivity as well.
Yep.
So I just wanted to, on his behalf, get that thought into your minutes and thinking. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Maybe you would be able to have one of the guys with their brush cutter go in there and clear that out. About an hour.
Yeah, possibly. Sometimes, I mean, that should work, but depends on what's there, because sometimes it
Yeah, you'd have to
the leak
check it out.
spikes and it ends up being worse than.
Right. It depends on what's there.
They can get pretty low.
Yeah.
But anyway, they do a good job.
My question would be, is that a trail? Like, is that something?
It's
for
always
trails
been a
or is it-
walkway. I know exactly what he's talking
But
about.
we call it a trail,
there's-
not a
Oh.
DPW thing.
And there's been a lot of discussion, when
Well, it's-
Gary did his connectivity study talking about,
yeah, using
Using
that.
it.
Okay, great.
so I think it's something to certainly consider. One final point for Nick. You represent, I mean, Scott represents that demographic too, of youngish parent with kids. You represent it more thoroughly. But, and so your input, I mean, some of us are a little older. But you're the ones who are gonna be using the trail, so it's really important to get input from you folks, so really appreciate you coming.
Thanks.
And as we interact with other people, and hopefully get involved with the Trails Club, we show up here if you have other ideas, we have your contact information. We can also send the chair's email address.
Right.
That you can communicate to us if you can't make it here too.
Okay.
So it's really appreciate you guys coming,
Yep.
especially this guy.
I think, Freddie, are you ready to go home? I think we're probably gonna, I don't know if it's gonna last much longer, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
They did.
We'll see you Monday.
Minutes, everyone have a chance to look at the minutes?
I did.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Comments for Linda?
Thank you, Brenda.
That's a good one, but any edits?
I'll move the adoption.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All right. And. Fine. Take care. All right, that's approved. Project updates. We wanted to basically, briefly kind of go through what was done by the two previous trails committees as we kind of look to go from here and move forward. So with that intro, Jane put together a PowerPoint presentation and then I kind of put one together based on what Jane had done. And what format is basically, here's kind of the broad brush with what the committee was tasked with doing, did. Here's residual action items. And then, we'll ultimately take a vote on the money portion of those action items and what we need to do in terms of procedures. So with that, Linda, can you?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna start with UCT.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this brief. I think we all are pretty much
Hold
aware.
on, I can put it in like presentation mode, then it will be bigger, sorry. Okay. Oh, did I take the wrong one? No.
Nope, no, sorry. So this is just the cover sheet. On the first slide, there's just a little bit of historical
Oh,
information.
sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, didn't go.
Will do. There we go, still late.
Oh, it's just a
There you go.
little slower.
There you go. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because I think we're all pretty familiar with it, but you can follow along with the slide. And I'll just throw in a few comments. The select board created the committee back in 2012. And it gave us a charge to build a multi-use trail system from Milford to Ashland, and we had to use the center trail. One of the first things we did was to hire the Conway School to produce a preliminary report and that got us started. From there, we hired a VHB engineering firm to prepare pre-engineering studies. We end up with over 13 different phases. We now call them segments of the entire length of the trail. When we prepared an ENF map, that was environmental notification map, which was one of the important steps we had to do midpoint. We had to submit this to the state because they were going to evaluate all the wetlands to tell us, look at things, well, you can probably go here, but maybe you should go over there and eliminate some, or, so it was an evaluation that the state really encourages different town committees when they're going to be applying for future grants. But we did run into significant concerns when we introduced it to the public over segment 7 that included the crossings of Hayden Road. Eventually, as we all know, both trail committees were dissolved and then combined into currently what we have now in 2025. So the next slide talks to, oh yeah, the action steps. So Peter and I spent a great deal of time. I want to thank you, Peter, for spending the time trying to work through this process. So one of the action items now tonight that the chair might ask you to consider is, do we retain the CPC monies that were granted in 2023 for the preliminary design for segment 1? And if we do that, there's just a couple of things that you should know. We're talking with the chair of the CPC because we did have concerns about, what we were supposed to do. And he said that we would have to use the same scope of work. However, we could use any engineer of the committee's choice, use VHB, or you could go to another engineer. That's not dictated by the CPC's granting of this work. So if we're successful in getting an engineer to the company to take this on using the same scope of work, it would be great if we could have this engineer agree to do this work, and then they would sign the contract and the work could be started quickly. Another choice this committee may choose to consider that the old scope of work could be developed its own approach, but the old scope of work, but this committee may decide on a different approach and hire an engineering firm to implement that approach. And speaking with the CPC chair, he said that is true as long as the end result supports a multi-use trail with a hard surface. Because that is, to be honest with you, all of our CPC applications through years have always taken that approach. Because. Oh, okay.
I just had a question. The hard surface thing, where does that come from?
Well, when we actually spent quite a few meetings with the DCR folks in the state of Boston, I mean, the city of Boston. And we were interested in how we could write our grant application so that we would have the most, we wanted to get as much points. I think that's how they do it with the point system possible. And when they're dishing out these, DOT grants, and it's millions of dollars for some of these projects. They are looking for, when you are building a multi-trail system, they are looking for hard surface because they're really looking for the optimal best use to invite as many people into this for usage as possible. And that's why one of the reasons why we used Hopkinton State Park, because we wanted to have that. The other thing that they're looking for is connectivity. Yep, so connectivity and hard surfaces like the Milford Tree.
So is that hard surfaces a DCR policy?
It's not a policy, however, you get.
So what is the, I don't want to, what is the background for that? I mean, what
I
is
don't
the
know.
sort of,
I think it's money, Jack.
They.
how so?
So if the Commonwealth is going to grant
Mhm.
money to fund the creation of a trail, it's on what James said, it's on a point system. The more points you have, the more money or the more likelihood you're gonna get the grant.
I know that, but
Right.
all I'm saying is what is the basis of the hard
Mhm.
surface?
We did ask that question, and it had to do with accessibility for people of all folks. All folks, and they want everybody to use this, kids, tricycles, skateboarders, people with walkers, wheelchairs. They want as many people from across the state as possible.
So valid questions for sure, but would we need to know or make a decision on the surface to
No,
vote on whether to spend the preliminary funds?
no,
No.
so, and that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay,
The
okay,
preliminary
sorry.
design, our design, that aspect is mind, but it's way, way, way too early to decide on the final surface of a trail, way too early. But they don't want to spend money on preliminary designs if you're going to in fact do something different, they don't want to have
So
the town come back and redo work.
what that says to me, I'm interested in this, that says to me is they do have a policy then, because if it's dictating their decisions as a policy, that's what I'm.
Okay, so what we were told was that it's not an exact policy. However, they give higher points. It's based on a point system, as you mentioned.
Okay.
And these awards of, they put all the points in there and you get higher points if you have designed, if you have these engineering studies, because when you apply for these grants, you have to, it's almost like a book that you have to supply. And they want these engineering surfaces, these engineering studies to show that you have put in the background work to satisfy the fact that if they decide that this is what you're going to do, then that's what.
So this,
You don't have to go back and redo work. You don't have to.
right, so this engineering study will be used if we move forward for application of a grant. And if there's reference to a hard surface in that engineering study, and we choose to go down that path, we would get more points for a grant.
Bottom line, it's satisfying the qualification.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, we're talking, we had talked last meeting about having guest speakers
Mhm.
at some point. We can figure out the priority. But I would put DCR and a representative, notwithstanding current
I'm
experience.
not a representative.
No, I'm saying notwithstanding your experience, you bring a lot to the table, but maybe have a current representative that we'd be able to ask all these questions, because it seems to have a significant impact on what we propose, our priorities, and how we proceed going forward. So it'd just be nice to actually get all the questions answered from actually the source. So that would be, I propose that at some point.
I would agree. And what we found that they weren't actually able to come to us, or they weren't willing to do that, but we took at least 2 members in each meeting. And we went into them, we spent a couple hours and we did it over several meetings. But we took all of the questions from the committee And then we walked in there and tried to get as much information as we could, and then we reported back to the committee.
Yeah, I mean, that
So
that would be a good
That
second.
was
Yeah.
the driving force behind the thought when we were doing up these preliminary studies. So in fact,
Hope, Linda's been patient, so.
It's okay. Did you want to wrap something up there?
yes, I would say that's the instructions that the committee had given VHB. So you may think, well, their engineering studies might have been a little more robust, but that was the thought process behind it. Yes.
So did I hear you say that CPC said unless it's a hard surface,
that's
don't
what-
spend this money?
That was Ken Weismantel's words, and I think it goes back to the engineering studies. So that these engineering studies that we've applied for CPC funding has reflected that the type of work that we have requested from VHB reflects that this, if in fact the committee wants to do that, those qualifiers are in the report.
What town meeting voted on is that second piece. It's for preliminary engineering, including wetlands assessment, topographical evaluation, and trail mapping of segment 1. And that's what we're gonna vote on tonight, spending.
With the chair. I don't think it would influence my vote personally on that. But it would be really good to get a copy of the CPC write-up and response just before we proceed with spending the money, just to know whether, because I think, again, I don't know, generally ask the question of people might know, do we need to know and have commitment to the surface before we conduct the engineering? And it sounds like that'll be at least an important preliminary decision to make, so we probably should know that.
Right, but what CPC thinks and what town meeting voted are not always the same thing. And
Yeah.
in this thing, it's pretty, in what town meeting votes is what we're paying. CPC made a recommendation, they may have some recommendations in their head. What town meeting voted is what that money is for.
I believe that when we made the application to CPC back in 2023, we included the scope of work and all the background information.
And that's what I was
I'm
thinking.
not sure if that answers your question or not.
Did that have a hard surface in that application?
I don't know if that's the language, but that's the,
was the
that's a
intent.
that was the intent, yes.
But it's not in the language.
Okay, good.
Right. And again, it's just so that the engineering company does, because for instance, if you're just going to redo a surface trail, you might just have to scale back 6 to 8 inches or whatever, and then go in there with stone dust. If you're going to prepare for a hard surface, you sometimes have to go down a foot or 2 feet. And so so in the engineering studies, it will, if you can go on the website, our website, you will see that all of those preliminary studies for the phases are there. And you will scroll through and you will see I'm not sure of the technical term, but Peter knows, where it shows the angles and the going down the depths and things like that.
Cross sections, yeah.
Cross sections, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So it's
Yeah, but I-
about including the scientific study with the engineering.
So, but for tonight, I think what we're gonna
Yeah, we didn't mean to get
hopefully
into that.
vote on, right?
Well,
I don't think
I
we did.
I hope we
Okay.
need to a little bit, but I think, what went to town meeting is what's
Yeah.
up there.
It's what,
and
So,
the reason, the thing is, just so you understand where I'm coming from, it's when agencies make decisions that becomes an effective policy, I think they have an obligation to explain the basis of doing it. Okay, that's all. And just because someone in DCI decides everything's gonna be a hot service, doesn't necessarily mean. I'd like to know the basis of that, because in some cases, hard surfaces, I believe, require more maintenance, then more costs to shift on people. There's a lot of different considerations. My intent, just as a learning person out here, is next Thursday at our stewardship council meeting, I'm gonna ask this question of DCI. What's the basis of these? Just, I want to do that, because it just interests me. It just drives me
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
When things become real because someone decided they're real and they don't have any justification. for it.
DCR, as you know, has proponents of stone dust trails, as well as, most of them are pushing for hard surface trails. And that flows from DOT because they understand it. The consultants, VHB, you know, they know it's 2 million a mile at least.
Oh, I think.
You know, so from DOT's perspective, a trail is half a road. We know how to build roads. We can build half a road. So that's their mindset. This is just, you know, we know how to review it. We know all that stuff. DCR is kind of going with that, and the consultants, people like VHB go, okay, 2 million a mile, 200,000 a mile, I'm getting roughly 10%. Do I want 20,000 for this mile of trail? Or do I want 200,000 for this mile of trail? So from VHB's perspective, the answer is pretty obvious. And so but that pushes then, because those people are the ones talking behind the scenes, the DCR people, and saying, hey, we really highly recommend you do, you know, and as you know, if you're doing the stewardship stuff, they're redoing these 20 years later, they're redoing a whole bunch of those asphalt trails, and it's not cheap. It hasn't gotten cheaper. I mean, the one up in Nashua,
why I-
very
There's
expensive.
pros and cons to everything, and I think we all can agree to
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Because stone dust washes out. You can't use stone dust effectively over, what is it? 5% grade or whatever, because it's prone to washing out, things like that.
Yeah, you've got to
And
be careful how you
you
use
gotta be careful how you.
Love
use it.
surface is one
And
of the
so-
criteria.
And
Yeah.
and our trail is unique, and the topography, you have to admit, is quite steep in a lot of
Right.
areas, and that's why when we look at the
So-
maps, you're gonna see zigzagging.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
I didn't mean to jump
No,
on this.
No.
So when
No,
we
that's fine.
I would suggest we hold off on the vote on all these, and I think I've got,
Yeah,
the
we should look
one,
at them all.
one package at the end. And then at that point, make add in any critiques we can think of, but I think in the interest of time, kind of keep moving, kind of keep moving, so,
Trying to get an understanding of this.
yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's a lot. It's a very complex project, and we've been at it for a lot of years.
Mhm.
Anyway,
So,
so our other choice would be to consider, the old scope of work, but we could develop its own approach. I think I said that. This is because they do not want to waste any of the town funds. I think I mentioned that. For receiving Mass DOT funding. So bottom line is the state, when they're granting these funds, don't want the committees that have to go back and redo their work. They want to see the work up front and know that they're supporting a project that they can support. Or we could, actually, this committee is brand new and we can do whatever we want. You can give up the 48,400, and then the committee could produce a different scope of work and then reapply for a different CPC grant the following year. So I think I mentioned, what we were basing the preliminary design engineering studies on, and the best practices at the time that we understood it. And truthfully, there's been such pause here. I think some of those standards have actually changed. And probably they're even more strict. And I believe because of the pause, money is even more costly. So there's a lot of updating that we need to do. So in slide 3, the next, so the DCR grant, that one for 100,000, that was closed out. That was used, it was
Right.
closed out.
So
So that's no.
that was 112,000. What,
Yeah.
was done was that the town took the 112,000 and made a trail that goes from the driveway down to EMC Park. It loops around the Marathon School, crossing over the driveway into the Marathon School,
Mhm.
and then
That
comes
goes-
back. It's probably 400 feet from the start of the trail. So this is big, so it's a U trail, and that's all there is there. Which was not actually what the grant was that was sent to DCR. The DCR grant was to go from EMC and come out onto Hayden Row. So this is a different
Who
route.
decided to do that?
I don't know. Dave Del Torio is the one who had the package. VHB was the consulting firm that did the work. But yeah, it's a trail that goes from one end and U's, and that's it.
Well, I thought it was, we were under the interpretation, well, didn't it go all the way around the perimeter of the whole town property
No.
out there?
It
To include,
But this one doesn't.
This goes right around the Marathon School
So-
and that's it.
And
I don't
it,
know.
it goes in between Marathon and.
well, the original intent
If you-
was to go all the
Right.
way around the
Right.
perimeter of the entire town property
And
and come out at 147 Hayden Road.
That's right.
What happened in between, I do not know.
So we thinking,
correct.
if you think it-
But there was never a DC, we never made an application to the DCR with that.
Yeah, that was the Mass Trails grant, that's the DCR Mass
But
Trails grant,
regardless-
112,000.
regardless, it's not something we're
No.
voting on, no.
No.
It's already
No.
built.
I had it up there because that bottom piece, I felt that we needed, if we hadn't returned the money, we needed to talk to DCR and with Jack here, I thought, what would be the best way to return the money? But it turns out we're not returning the money, we actually spent the money.
On that plan.
Uh,
So it's there.
There you go.
So
It's in the
so
library.
anyway, next slide.
The next slide.
Actually, I have a copy of it. It's on our drive. Or it's gonna be on our drive. I forgot to put it up there. So I'll include a link to it. For anyone who wants.
This
to-
is a map when it comes up. This is the map that shows segment one. It starts at East Main Street at the, well, let me see.
Do you want me
This is
to
the
find
discussion.
map? Yeah, okay, 1 sec. Is this it?
The first, yes,
Oops,
Oh,
did I
no.
go too far?
you
Sorry.
went too far. That's 9. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a little hard to see, but it's the green line. It's a light green line.
Yeah.
The triple dark line on the bottom, that's the gas pipeline. Okay, so the route that we plotted was starting at 135, which is on your right-hand side. I think you can see 135 going up and down there. It follows the perimeter of the property between Mrs. Mez's property and the town-owned open space, which is slightly gray between the pipeline and the light green line. And then you'll see it as it goes up further, this is quite a steep grade.
Going down towards the lake, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
it goes from right to left. So as we're going to the left there, you'll see the line start to squiggle. That's because the topographical map is really steep there. There's a lot of ledge and other things. It's just a high grade.
Right.
Yeah, and it goes to that line there on the left-hand side. That's where it meets phase 9. You'll see phase 9 on the upper right-hand square there. So this both phase 8 and 9, those are what we call phases. We then combined into segment 1. Okay, so this is half of segment 1,
And now at the extreme left, that it goes on to DCR property?
not yet.
Oh, it's almost,
We're still on Legacy Farms.
Yeah, so this is the Tennessee Gas
You
oh,
know,
I-
land.
Oh,
And then
I
there's
know,
a,
you know,
there's a
I
fence,
see.
there's a road here,
got it, I got it.
and then there's, you take the fence and you take the road.
But this is town property
Yeah,
here.
so where did,
no, that is Legacy Farms.
Yeah.
right,
Town property is just the gray, the light gray.
That, all right,
Yes, and see that dark spot within that gray? That's where the International Museum, I think, is planning to go.
right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, fairly annoying part of this map, in my opinion, is there's a big retention pond, I believe.
It might be
Here?
further up.
I think it's that green spot there.
It might be in phase 9.
Do you think
Kathy.
it could be the greens?
Yeah, it's not really retention pond. It holds water most of the time, but not all the time. It's kind
Oh,
of.
no, there's a massive one, right.
Oh, the one they built with the development. Yeah,
And I don't know how the trails to get around that.
Well, I think we made this map before Legacy Farms was actually built out.
Yeah.
So
And so.
it's going to have to be tweaked.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
going to have to
it
be,
looked like a lot of room for tweaking on the left there, but.
no, well, what they're, what I think needs to be considered, is it enough wetlands there that there has to be a bridge constructed? This is what this engineering study, this is what phase 1, this is
Running
what
down it is
segment
easy
1
enough,
preliminary
yeah.
study
Yeah.
would determine. It would look at wetlands delineations in there. Do we need to do bridges, or can we sneak between a certain area? Are those, is there any ledge in there or massive trees that need to be taken out? Those are the kinds of things that they would be looking at with, if we decide to accept this 48-4. And it would be more of a desktop exercise in that they would take all of the current maps that they have, I don't think that there would be, at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there'd be a lot of on-site working with them.
No, absolutely be on site. That'd be the first step is out in the field. I mean, to Ken's point,
Yeah.
you need to get out there and flag
Yeah.
and walk the topography.
Okay.
You really can't see it from.
I can't even, I'm not even sure that Legacy Farms is built out the way they say it is on the map.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
I don't think
it's
it is.
different. I'm sure it's changed.
Yeah.
So now who drew this map?
VHB.
Based on,
But based on the multiple walks that we all did with the property owners, there's 5 different property owners that we had to work with on that. Our committee, VHB was there. On the other end, you'll see in segment 9, DCR people were there.
Yeah.
So it was probably over the course of 2 years, with multiple sidewalks. And we had to stay within the perimeters of what the property owners were willing to allow us to go.
so
And
that would be, it's Legacy Farm, who owns it? Like,
yeah, Roy McDowell.
yeah,
it's-
yeah,
yeah.
McDowell owns
yeah.
it.
And then part of it, we had to go through a small part that's owned by Heritage Farm. It comes up in one of the maps. I mean,
Okay.
on the slides, you'll see all the property owners listed. We had multiple talks with Kinder Morgan, who oversees the pipelines, the gas pipelines. They're the property owner, they're the administrator for all of that. And that was complicated working with all of them. Because of all of the restrictions, and they won't allow you to go on top of their pipeline, but you can go across it at certain areas. And there was also a lot of wetland delineation issues, especially with, as you get up toward Legacy Farms, I'm sure you've heard all of the problems with the trails
Mhm.
project, where we were able to get an agreement with them to go through. It wasn't a big spot that we had to go through with them. But that was one of the considerations that we had to work with. All right, so then the next slide shows the second part of segment 1. The next map.
2 down.
Sam's map, okay.
Yeah, the next.
There we go.
Okay, so on this one, we left off on the far right-hand side. This is what you'll see, a yellow line. This is the yellow line we're going to be following. And this is the proposed route. And again, we are going through Legacy Farms property, Heritage Farm properties, and then we enter the DCR property / Hopkinton State Park. Because not only do they own, of course, we all know where the Hopkinton State Park is. On the left, you can see the big reservoir there, but they own all of the property right at the town line where Hopkinton ends and Ashland begins. That's-
Sorry, I'm late.
That's the town of Ashland. However, the DCR owns the property, and that's who we worked with. One of the owners that we did not work with, because it was very preliminary, was the town of Ashland, because when the trail actually hits Wilson Street, that's going to be in Ashland. And of course, it was very preliminary and it was too soon to talk with them, but they may require maybe a flashing light, or who knows, a crosswalk painted in the road, or who knows, but we never even went there. But that would be another property owner that we would have to speak to. But and you can see that the change in the grade when those yellow lines go back and forth, switchbacks, thank you. Because according to the regulations, you can only go so many feet on a certain grade. You either have to have a stop or a rest spot, you have to have a bench or something like that to qualify for the handicap accessible. Making sure that as many people as possible can use these trails.
There's less of a grade if you go to the dam instead of below the dam, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes. There is one of those alternatives there too, but this is the one that we're showing tonight. This ends up down by the lower the access road.
Yeah.
It's a fire access road that goes it's right in the vicinity of the soccer fields.
There's a trail there now, isn't there? Of some sort?
Yes, there are 2 trails.
Yeah,
One's just a footpath,
right.
and one, I believe it's this one, is fairly close to it, but it would have to go through the woods.
Yeah, ridden back there.
And when we spoke to the few, I don't know if you were on this, hike or not, Ken, but when we said, well, what size, how old are the trails, I mean, the trees that you would be willing
Right.
to let us knock down? But I was shocked when they said anything, nothing over 100 years old. I went, wow, because we're used to dealing with, with foreign injuries, But, they were very excited actually because they looked at it as a possibility to expand their park system. All right, so the next slide actually, I believe, shows the scope of work.
This, sorry. This one?
It's like slide number 7 or 8
Yeah, it was the one after that picture.
after that one. So you're down arrow maybe.
Okay.
There you go. So this is the scope of work when we gave VHB what we wanted. This wasn't driven by VHB. The committee members would go out, do all this research and talk with all these folks, and then just we relied heavily on our town engineers because it is a major, they considered it a major town project. So they were very interested in managing, they pretty much managed VHB, to tell you the truth. Our committee did not do that. They did that, at least later on. In the beginning, I think we did a lot, but didn't we, Ken? And later on, when it started to get a little bit more complicated, the town kind of volunteered. Because they
What
wanted,
date was this prepared for? Do you have any idea?
yeah, this was in 2023, I believe.
Yes,
Okay.
for 2022 town meeting.
Yeah, so this is what was submitted to the town.
Mhm.
So if we want to follow this scope of work, the CPC is willing to allow the 48.4 if we use this scope of work and if we don't go over the price range. And they also stated that if we don't want to use VHB, the committee is free to choose another engineering firm if they wanted to do that.
Was it true? So I understand your statement about if we proceeded with this statement of work, CPC would fund it. How about if we opted, because this is where my head's going, to do less than this?
We would, in that, I do not know the answer to that
Typically,
question.
that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to verify.
Yeah, and again, if you move things,
Not to sway the group.
yeah, CPC understands that when you put your project bid in, you don't necessarily have all the answers of what you're going to do. And so there is some flexibility in that. The thing that's not flexible is that bottom number. You can't go.
You
over
can't
it.
go above it.
That's it.
And also, I think he was very firm in the fact that all of the underlying qualifications should be specific to qualifying, doesn't mean we're going to have one, but at least qualifying for engineering for a hard surface. In other words, showing what it would cost to dig down a foot or two or whatever it is.
I would disagree with that because of what town meeting voted, which is different. But there is, CPC does get the sign off, so we could.
Yeah.
we can
You're
talk.
gonna have to,
That's-
that's
I
gonna be a
think that's
discussion
down
with
the road
CPC.
discussion At this point.
And I think the other thing that he made clear was that if we want to use this 48.4 right away, an engineering firm has to sign by the end of March, beginning of April at the latest to use this. And if the committee doesn't want to do that, that's fine too. This committee can do whatever it wants. It's a clean slate. There's this if you want to use it. If you don't, we start over.
Okay.
Linda? Hold on.
This isn't a fair question, but I'm gonna
Just- Jack, just a second. Linda had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I feel no allegiance.
Yeah.
No, okay. So this is a little bit related to the DCR, the Mass grant money too, but if we don't use this money, does CPC get mad? If we start using this money, but are like, oh, we don't even really like what we're doing, we're gonna throw it away, do they get mad? Do they care either way? Like, I feel bad that we spent all that money with that other grant and exactly know,
CPC would take the money back.
right, but will they be mad that
No,
they
I
put
know.
it aside?
No, they'll give it to somebody else.
Right. If it just, we wouldn't, if we spent 48,000, it came back and said, hey, we spent the 48,000 and we're not going this route, they'd be a little ticked. If we go and say, hey, we did some preliminary stuff and Ken was out there flagging and we had an engineer do the site walk with us so that we could determine what the best route was, and we decided that the best route is nowhere near here.
Yeah.
There's a better option. We spent $10,000. I think they'd be absolutely fine with that. So it's a,
But I think that would then fall into next year's work project.
Right.
We would not be using this, and that's fine. If that's what this committee,
For additional funding,
Yeah.
here, sure.
actually been good.
Hopefully we'd have a better story at that point too,
it could be.
you know.
It
My,
could be.
my question is, looking at that map up there, and then having a sense anyway that the land use there has changed quite a bit. I mean, oh, we're asking someone to do this on a potential route that may not be a route at all. Does that make any, I mean,
Could be. We
Yeah, I
don't
mean-
know, because there was a significant lapse in time here and things have changed.
Right.
And the,
well, ownership
just don't
probably
know.
changed somewhat.
Well, and to back it up even a little further, if we want to really start with a clean slate, we know where the trail is in Milford. So getting to that point is easy. Ashland does not have a trail on the ground. They've got one small section. There may be better option for Ashland over by Ashland Reservoir. That would take Legacy South out to the end and connect through Ashland Reservoir. It may be a better route going that way, but bottom line is Ashland doesn't have anything on the ground. For our purposes at Hopkinton, this trail gets us to Hopkinton State Park and potentially to the Southborough train station. And to do that via this route is perhaps one of the hilliest ways to do that. You have to go down East Main, get into the flat, come up the hill, and then down to the reservoir. If you were to get to the Southborough train station as your primary area, you're coming out of Hopkinton, so west of 85, you could come down out of Hopkinton. There's a huge wetland area, but we know there's a path through there.
Okay.
But you could put boardwalk and bridges, and then you could get something that gets up close to the road and is much more level, and therefore takes out a lot of the switchback impediment issues that way. So as a committee, I mean, obviously, we're not going to make that decision tonight, but the question here is, do we hold on to this 48,000 for a route that maybe isn't ideal for what our goals are, which are Hopkinton State Park, Southborough train station? Or should we just say, you know what, let's clean slate, let's start over?
So you had suggested at the beginning that we hear everything first. I think we're drilling down so deep, we might want to just at some point make a decision on this and then move on to the other items for
Probably,
the sake
yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
So if the conversation is opened up, if you and everybody agree with that, I have a couple of comments, but I can hold them.
Have Jack first
Yeah,
and then
No,
your comment.
I just had a question. It's always struck me, actually, in front of my house, there's a cul-de-sac. And if you walk through that, from that cul-de-sac, you go right within 100 yards, you cross the Tennessee Gas, and then you're on the old telephone line, which
Mhm.
is reasonably flat.
Yeah.
And it crosses, there's two crossings of two streams, which are, they're significant, but they're not major
So
crossings.
they're each $100,000.
I mean, people used to cross them just
$50
by
to $100,000.
Pallets in there.
Not bad.
And then if you follow that out, you have a pretty good way with very little topography
Yep.
to get right behind the park headquarters easily.
Yeah.
And that also gives you the ability to go to the duck pond.
Mhm.
So it allows people on Saddle Hill Road access to the train station
Yeah.
besides, anyway, just,
I don't actually understand.
I mean, it's I mean, I think there are probably some land ownership issues there.
How do you get to the
But-
train station without going all the way around Hopkins Reservoir?
You stay in the west side, close to the road in some of those parts, but you can do it.
Well, what part?
Well,
If you're
Yeah.
going from,
between the ranger station and the entrance to Hopkins State Park, you've basically got a hill going up on the west. You got the lake, which is pretty close to some places on the east.
So anyways, I would think, like to get back to
Oh.
on spending the money or not.
Well,
So-
I thought what my comment was at least germane to.
No, Jack, I didn't mean it in any
Well,
way.
that's a different, there is a different, there are different routes.
Yeah, no,
Right. And
so,
so
so
the,
point's taken.
yeah.
So if I may go ahead, Chair. So I would like to, it's not necessarily proposing for a vote, it could be, but my proposal for everybody's consideration is that we look, as the map was shown, for connectivity to the museum to the right-hand side, where it's flatter from, from the road, and we don't consider the left hand as a connection. We looked at, we do some low-cost, light lift preliminary work of flagging and things like that on that right-hand side. I guess it was here called phase 8. It was phase 8, but not all of phase 8, not when you go down to the hill, like stop at the museum and look at that for connectivity. It's a short segment, but again, if
So
at all,
museum to what?
if you could look at map, that's easy for me to spell.
One right before this,
The one right before it,
right before.
the one with the zigzag,
That was the one that you just had.
The other
This
way.
one?
the other way,
Up.
No, those are alternatives that we looked at, but chose
the
not.
one with the green, actually.
Keep going up.
Green line.
There's, oh, I mean, it says appendix.
No, it was way up.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, yeah. it was
Okay,
way up.
here,
right
It was the first,
There.
one.
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
So what I'm suggesting is to the right-hand side, we know where the museum's gonna be. It's a short segment. But if we're to spend any money on this, the only thing I would frankly be in favor of is that, because you might want
But
Trails
starting
into the
where,
museum.
where, I'm sorry.
on the right-hand side, well,
Yeah,
Peter,
see, they're gonna put a driveway in
yeah.
to here anyway. So,
Oh, so that was gonna be the driveway. Okay. Point taken. I thought, for some reason, I thought the driveway was coming in below that.
it,
Uh,
they're gonna be,
I haven't seen the museum plans. Okay.
What happens on the other side of 135?
Legacy South.
No,
No,
to the
there's-
right.
no, it goes, it has.
Right, so where is this going anyway?
Good question.
so
Means.
we looked into, trying to purchase or get an easement through the property on the other side of the road that would take us up to the back of Center School.
Yeah.
And it turned out the property owner wanted way too much money. But the way these systems work now, these multi-use trail systems, they're turning into be a hybrid type of a system so that you can use pre-existing roadways and sidewalks as your trail. It's not ideal, but until something else comes up, that's what these cities and towns are doing. That's what Milford is doing, and Halston has done it in spots. In other words, they have to go through parking lots or whatever. You have to get a connection. And sidewalks, existing sidewalks and roadways are allowed.
So here's the
So
solution.
the solution would be to use East Main Street. There is a sidewalk there and there is a road.
Right, so you go up into town that way.
Yeah.
Yes,
But now
because
that now that
the town could-
I hadn't seen the plan for the driveway there. For some reason, I have an image of one. It was preliminary where the driveway was coming in lower. So again, this is an older map too. So my point is then, I don't see a lot of value unless we dead end it or come back out in investing in this.
So I don't understand where Ashland is gonna be coming in.
they're coming in, in fact, they're putting together, their town manager has just put together for this town meeting coming up for them, a $2 million grant to get the engineering, and their trail would come in. Is it Cross Street? It would come down.
By how.
House Street,
where they-
and it would enter Hopkinton State Park. The other side of the soccer fields on the lower end.
So that's the other map, not this
Right.
map. Okay, so this map doesn't connect us to Ashland.
Right.
It's giving us different things.
Well, this will go to
Suppose-
Hopkinton State Park,
Eventually.
and Ashland is coming right into that same.
Yeah, if Ashland's Trail does come in there, then yeah, we could connect to it.
Right,
But we
But
can
that's-
connect other ways. as
that's
well.
what they're proposing. Correct.
Yeah. So this isn't, by no means, it doesn't seem like the only option.
Correct.
So.
No, to be fair, though, to the old committee, we did look at all of those other options, a lot of those options going through the cemetery, going down Reserve Street and downtown Hopkinton to get to the duck
Mhm.
pond. And that was, It was just,
Very plausible, yeah.
it wasn't manageable because there was too much private property, it's too dense.
The hillside on.
The hillside, there's a hillside there, wherever you go in Hopkinton, there's hills. That's why it's called Hopkinton Hills, the Hillers. Wherever you go, there's hills. You're gonna get them, no matter where. But it wouldn't hurt for this committee to go out and redo all of the site walk that we did before. Ken's an expert, trail
Yeah.
hiker. We go out with our
My
machetes.
thinking is that we gotta embrace the hills, you know, we're just gonna have the grades.
We are, we're not going to get away from the grades.
I want to just throw out two really insane points or thoughts, things that
Nothing
I've
is
thought
insane.
about years
Now
ago.
we're getting somewhere.
So the first one is, sometimes going after grants imposes restrictions that don't serve you well. And so you're going for free money, but you're not really getting what you want. And so I'm always cautious. So hearing that the DOT grants require X, Y, Z, I honestly have no idea where the money would come from otherwise. But I also just say, maybe we shouldn't always go after grants. If, you know, I just kind of look a little bit at some of the project that has been done right out in front here. And some things were done because that's what you have to do to get the grant, but maybe it doesn't serve us well. So it's one thing. The second thing that's crazy is when I talked about something for everyone, does every trail need to be paved? Like if you're talking about skateboarders and handicap use, and if this is really hilly, they're probably not going to want to use that anyhow. Maybe the road bikers would, you know, the speed bikers. But I don't know, like, does every trail need to be paved, or is it good enough to have some of them paved, not all of them? Even if it means we don't get the big DOT grant, but if the cost is only a tenth or a fifth, maybe we go for that on some of the segments. So like I said, those are just crazy big ideas, but they've been sitting in my head for years
No, I
now.
think those are valid points. And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, this is going to turn out to be one great big hybrid trail system, because any trail that you use in the final plan that is pre-existing and happens to be stone dust or whatever is acceptable. It's built in to the cake. You know, the state doesn't have anything to say about that. They don't say, oh, we're gonna come in and pave Center Trail. They don't do that. That it's grandfathered in. So any work that we would have, that we might do beforehand, before we decide to finish this off, that might be another way of approaching this as well.
Well, that's, the reason the hot surface got my attention was, I remember a couple of years ago, there was someone walking around on Center Trail with a petition because someone wanted to put hard surface down there.
I never heard that.
Remember that?
No?
Yeah.
I never heard about that.
So some genius decided they wanted to pave it for some reason, and
I don't think
so I was
see
just
that.
there and someone walked up to me with a petition and asked me to sign it, so
Well-
I did.
To pave it or not pave it? What was the petition?
So-
Petition was to pave it?
No, to not,
To not pave it, okay.
Mm.
Oh, the petition was.
Well, it's already not paved.
Oh, yeah.
no, I know that.
You can't- you can't-
To keep it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why. There might have been
No.
a petition to not pave it, but that was,
it was David Dolman.
Oh, was it Dave?
yeah, yeah. okay,
Oh, yeah, he had some.
Yeah.
That may have been not paving the whole.
Whatever.
Yeah, there are just a couple of other things that, you know, well, I'll avoid, you know, at some point, we're gonna get into the Upper Charles Trail and how we're doing that, and there's, you know, obviously a lot of
There's
experience.
a lot of work to do.
But, you know, I think to Scott's point, we probably should go ahead and just vote on, do we want the 48,000 from CPC, or do we think it's better for us to step back, figure out what we want to do, where we best want to do it, before we move forward?
Well,
So
I would,
I'm
I would say.
looking for a motion to,
Well, I
that-
would just add, well, I mean, if it's a yes or no, I would like to just present something between.
or we can go, well, we can go around and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I?
Sure.
I didn't want to speak out of turn. So I do feel like a lot of good points were raised today about other alternatives, and I don't know, given that this is intended to be for the point of connectivity to the state park. I'm wondering if we could use a portion of that money to assess options for state park connectivity, which some of them were even proposed here tonight, which sound very interesting to me. Use just a small portion of that money and return the rest. And it could be even walking, flagging and preliminary for those options, if it would fit within the CPC.
It's my
I
understanding
think
we would
it's-
not be able to do that.
I
We
think
would have to
it,
apply for.
I think it certainly would, because if you bring up the scope of work, so 2 slides up, Linda, you'd certainly want to do a LiDAR survey as part of that. That's item 1 on that
Yeah,
list.
I think if I did the math, it was like $5,000 or $6,000 in my head,
Yeah.
at least the, not 2022
Sorry.
price.
Other direction,
So I'd like
Yeah.
the wording.
yeah, down,
In my head, I had not more than 10,000.
that one right there. So you've got LiDAR, field operations, observations, alignment, wetlands investigations.
Yeah, basically, that's
Yeah, you
Great
could,
Rose is what I was thinking, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Over the entire,
Well, not necessarily there, but looking at options first as a group, maybe doing our walk. And then taking that money to that next step, potentially to get the LiDAR. To an extent, we could do some field observations. And I don't know the extent of the alignment here, but then wetlands, we might need someone else.
my understanding is if we want the 48-4 and we want to sign up before the end of April or beginning of April, end of March, we have to use the scope of work with the idea that this, whatever they're going to create,
It's only for this route.
yeah, is only for this route and has to, at the ultimate, it's designed for a hard surface. street.
it's for generally this route. It is
Yes.
not specific, because otherwise, part of the funding is mapping
Yeah.
the route. So it's, it's in this general area.
You'll
So I
see
think it's what
East
you're
Main
talking about.
Well,
yeah.
it says East Main Street documents.
From East Main
Right.
Street down to State Park, yeah. Linda?
So another point is one of our other exercises. So we're going to spend 15 minutes on this, but we're now, but it's okay. It's really good. One of our other points is to prioritize work. So I know that the Upper Charles Trail Committee was designed, everything completely end to end. And if we're doing priorities, do we need that? Or should we just be like picking parts to do? Do we really, like, if we don't know that segment 1, we have a good design yet, let's not even try to plan it or design it yet. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, if, maybe to your point earlier about, we know where Milford is, or maybe we know we want to get from the, when we look at priorities, what are the most important things in town? If getting from the train station to downtown or to is the most important thing, we should be focusing on that, not necessarily completing this Upper Charles Trail design, which I really appreciate all the work that went into it all, though. So you hate to throw that away, and I don't even mean to say throw it away. You hate to put it off, but
Well, it sounds to me like, Ken and I and some other people did it from the beginning for the last 15
Mhm.
years. And we have walked probably every inch of the proposed route and more, multiple choices. And there is no easy road. I wish we really had an abandoned rail trail that we could use. But we don't. And Hopkinton is full of granite hills, wetlands and swamps.
And private land.
And private land. And this is what we came up with at the end of the day. But it sounds to me like this committee needs to take and look eyes at it and go out and do all of the hiking that we've done. I mean, I'm sure Ken and I can do that again.
I don't mind. Actually, the train has changed some, because
Legacy Farms it has.
Legacy Farms didn't really get built out where I thought it was gonna get built out exactly.
No, there's still a lot of open space up there. It's really nice. But anyway, I
another
don't
big
know.
question, does our charge say that we need to build an Upper Charles Trail that connects Ashland to Milford? I
Yes.
think it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so we definitely have to do something to connect
Yeah.
eventually. Okay.
And if you think the wetlands are bad, Legacy Farms, wait until you see the wetlands that connect to Milford.
Yeah.
Parking lot.
Well, lots of
Tons. It's not going to be an easy route, no matter which way we go. But
Milford actually need to go down Echo. There's one small
Yes,
section.
the
that's it.
problem is, how do we cross that road?
So do we have, it sounds like we have a couple suggestions. Mine is to spend a portion of it to look, just a small portion, maybe the first three, around 8 or 10,000. To do that investigation, because they do think it's important for connectivity to state park. The other option is sounds like Linda, not what words you mouth is, let's not do it. Let's prioritize something else and give the whole money back. Is that?
I'm not saying that I necessarily feel that. I'm raising
Oh,
that as a point.
Yeah, so in the value of the approach you're talking about is twofold. One is there's, trails that could connect from the Marathon Museum, if that goes in, or at least from East Main Street over to the Legacy North Road. And then from Legacy North Road through, which would allow access for the residents over there down to the state park more
Right.
readily.
Right,
So
and I just don't.
it may have some value, even though, and I think dovetailing that was, what Ken's talked about is let's put some of these trails in as a walking trail first and.
Exactly, and that would be the like lift. I don't. You guys have done more of this, a lot more than this than I have, but I don't think it'd be a heavy drain on our focus and attention on the other priorities to, engage a third party lightly in this. That's my sense, but I'd look to you guys to validate or dispel that.
Okay, so back to looking for a motion. Linda?
Sorry,
Well,
before the
last
motion,
one.
so the one concern I have is like, once you guys did this great study before and then legacy, things changed. If we do this study now, but don't actually do any work there for a while, are things gonna change again? Such
I
that the
I
money.
think it's pretty much set.
It's likely built out,
Okay,
it is built out. So
Yeah, these are
and there's
one
no
more
other
thing.
things that could change, like when the Marathon Museum goes in or.
No,
No, we've-
driveways around there could change. I think those guys. are
Well, no,
likely-
because we put it around the perimeter, purposely around the outside between Mezzott's property and the town open space, so that we're won't interfere.
And they want trails.
And they want trails, they
They
want
do
to
want
connect.
trails.
Yeah, they're really hot to try. They want to connect to this trail system.
So now I'm looking for a motion.
I'll motion that we retain $10,000 of it to do a initial, I don't know if I'd officially call it, I guess as an extent, it could be a LiDAR, but I think do a field observation and alignment. That could include a LiDAR and some wetland investigation up to $10,000 to evaluate the priority. A route and prioritize that.
Yeah, hold on.
Purpose of information.
And so that would involve more parking on the ground,
Correct.
but, and why only 10,000?
I don't
Well,
think.
I don't know. I'm just guessing based on.
I think we need to keep the whole amount,
Can I
but
just for the sake of, I'll second his motion for the purpose of discussion. Now I think we should talk about it. Okay?
yeah, one question, Chuck, I didn't see your hand because Chuck, you're muted. You're on mute.
You're still on mute.
Chuck, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
There you go.
Thank you to the chair. For information, LiDAR is available on Mass Mapper and I think even on the town GIS. And I have used it to do some preliminary feasibility work quite easily to make sure you at least had feasible grades. The other thing, and I think Ken's longstanding recommendation to walk an area, flag it. If you do that with a clinometer, you can make sure that you have a route that's feasible with the minimum 5% or maximum 5%, or for shorter distances, 8%, 30 feet, 10%. But in any case, you can do a rough layout that you can be reasonably sure will comply. And then you bring in the wetland investigations.
Right.
There's no sense in delineating all the wetlands on on an area if you're not going to be near them. You can focus any more detailed mapping on the proposed route.
Yep.
And the conceptual alignment, hey, you've done it.
Yep.
I guess my point is that I think there are ways that this can be done to reduce, both reduce the cost and improve the layout. We certainly some experience with one of VHB's projects on, I don't think it was the Campus Connector. They did all their initial work and then laid out a route that required a removal of substantial trees, and with very minor adjustment. If that had been done previously, it could have saved additional survey costs. I think Ken's idea of initial flagging is key.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Chuck. To keep it simple for CPC, I would recommend we initially go for the whole budget, and then I'll talk to Ken
I can amend. my motion.
Wiseman offline.
Yeah, he's not gonna go for.
Right, he's not gonna go for some small.
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to retain.
When we do get to give them a budget, we will want to have that.
Yeah.
For their final approval.
So we're discussing this motion now anyway,
Correct.
but.
So we'd have to vote it down.
Huh?
We would have to vote it down unless you amend it.
No, I amended it to be the full amount.
Oh,
Right.
Okay, so then just process wise, so you can go back to CPC and ask them if that works for them.
Yes, as long as
And
it's less.
and based on that approval, we could construct a budget for them. Okay.
Yes.
I think you're gonna have to talk with them about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think what we are trying to do here, I believe, is act in the best interest of the town.
Right.
Yeah,
Fiscally and otherwise, and we're just being prudent, and I assume they would welcome people doing that.
Taking prudent action, yes,
Yeah.
not spending entire budgets just because you have them.
Right,
Yes.
exactly, or realizing it may not actually give you a result that you want and you want to change it. That seems to be
Yeah.
reasonable.
Linda?
I'm sorry, Ken, do you? want to-
Yeah, I think
I-
Ken first, actually.
Just wanted to make the comment that, we are charged with trying to connect between Hopkins State Park and Milford, but if it turns out that this route is possible to develop to something that is less than the full use and multi-use path that we had in mind, I would argue that it's still worth pursuing this route. If it's a grade 3 instead of, let's see, grade 1 is the full multi-use path. It's only grade 3. I just think it's still worth it to make the route, so long as there's community buy-in to do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and I don't know whether that would suffice for our charge or not. But
Well, I mean,
think
our
it's
charge is
better.
connectivity, our charge is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a multi-use path. That's where you're gonna run into it.
Well, so that's the thing. I wanted to,
It is a multi-use path and that's in our charge.
yeah, so it's still a multi-use path, maybe not quite the
Class
same.
3 is not.
Well, okay, so that's the question. Is that a contradiction that it?
But it doesn't have to be ultimately. I don't know if we have the answers today, but does it ultimately have to be an Upper Charles segment
That's what I'm.
versus connectivity? This is of interest to the town,
I don't.
I
think so.
believe.
I mean, if.
Well, we're
as in the-
charged with building out the Upper
Right.
Charles Trail.
Correct.
If you want to have a different type of a trail and use that segment, that's a different
Right.
conversation altogether.
So, well, hold on. So you said multi-use necessarily means a certain class and a class 3 wouldn't be multi-use.
No,
Is that, and does our charge say multi-use and
it says
but
multi.
does it really mean that?
It's a shared use path, there's.
Yes, it's a shared use
Defined
path.
definition, but they're somewhat flexible.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, like you said, sometimes you have to use the roadway.
maybe sometimes you have grade, you
We
don't.
do, and there's so much that we haven't really done. I'd say that what we did was, complete an entire conceptual plan from Huntington State Park to the Milford Bike Trail. But there's so much, this is such a fluid, project, and you really don't know until you get into the nitty gritty. There's a lot of stuff that's going to change in between. I'm sure of that, but you have to start somewhere. And this is a good plan to take this money and use it where we can use it. It will give us a jumping off point so that we know what we have to do next. This is not the final project by any means. There's going to be further design studies. There's going to be further engineering studies. There's probably going to be borings, drilling and borings that has to go. This is just the very first step. And if you are going to go after the $3 or $4 million or even more, $6 million to build from Hopkinton State Park to East Main Street, we're not going to get that from Mass Trails grants, which has a cap of $5,000. I believe that they recently upped it to $5,000. But the DOT, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Huh?
No,
'Cause
that's-
you did
I'm
put
sorry,
so
I'm
much
sorry.
here.
I know it was a fine, but yeah.
Well, I do see value in going from East Main to Hopkinton State Park. I do see that value. I do also appreciate the fact that this charge needs to be relatively specific, meaning we can't go from Saddle Hill to Hopkinton State Park. The Upper Charles Trail needs to be shared use or multi-use.
Shared use path.
Yeah. Right, it needs to be a shared use path with, and this funding provides for that. My concern is property ownership that has changed in the last 2 years. So the Trails Committee, the Upper Charles Trails Committee, met with these owners and had presumably a verbal understanding.
Well, there was memorandums of understanding. There was all the stuff was in writing, but it's outdated and it needs to be revisited.
Okay, but that's my point,
Yeah.
is that it has changed, right? And so this preliminary map that we saw is on dated information.
Yes.
And so if we engage a firm to go with that preliminary map, it may not be legit because ownership has changed.
It hasn't changed. They're the same property owners that own the property, but they would have to be, we would need to call them up and say, hey, look, we want to we want to revisit this and we want to do some LiDAR and some other things. We would have to call them up and let them know that we would like to go on their property again.
And if they say no,
Well,
is that dead in the ground?
I don't think they're gonna
I'm
sell.
just asking the
I
question.
don't
If
know.
we say no, is it dead in the
we
ground?
don't know until we ask.
Let's just assume somebody says no. For the purpose of discussion,
So
let's just assume one
I
person
don't
that.
know. I do not know the answer to that.
Well, I mean, we have to look at options. The motion is to retain access to the funds. With my expectations, we would not spend the entire amount of funds. And we would do some preliminary work ourselves up front before we hired any third party.
Right.
That's at least been, more implied than stated, but that's what I meant by the
Well, I
motion.
thought we had to get the firm before the
I
end of
do,
next month.
because no, because that's what, well, Ken did tell me that he wanted a contract signed with a engineering firm
By the end.
by the end of March or beginning of April.
I mean, there are contracts that can sign that are contingent on our go-ahead, because we could do the preliminary work, so.
I think we would go out there
work
tomorrow.
with the engineer.
Letter of
doesn't
intent,
actually have to get
a letter of
started.
intent or something, yeah.
And as all town contracts say, the work is done at our discretion. So if we sign a contract and then tell them we're not doing it, we can do that. Not ideal, but we've got firms we've worked with in the past that.
Okay.
I
I was, like I said, just
No,
thinking there's somebody that could go rogue on us.
and the other, but also to your point, it does put us as a committee, it's establishing a priority for us. And that's another question. Do we want this as one of our priorities? I mean, there's not a lot of us here. So that's a question.
Well,
Go ahead, and then I'm gonna bug David because I've heard.
I mean,
one of the things, that if this path, though, this conceptual path is something that's a priority of us, I'd sort of like, I guess, the other person that's here is to go through the other alternatives you looked at and explain to me why this was the best one.
There's two other alternatives.
Yeah, I don't know that, so I'm just, so before I personally would say, well, this is a priority, I'd like to know what the other potentials are.
Oh, Linda
Could I just make a point that, to me, one of the reasons this is a priority versus any other segment we're talking about is because there's money on the table to be spent, not because it's a priority for any other reason right now.
Yes.
And that's
No, it's
not
not
a
a priority.
valid, it's not a valid, it's a valid priority, but it may not be
Ideal.
ideal.
I thought that's why we're discussing it.
Exactly.
tonight.
It
But
became a priority when we
from, yeah,
abandoned Hayden Road. Didn't want to go there anymore,
but
we need time to figure that out. So we said,
That was
this
the
is
Upper
next
Charles
to go.
Trail. That's
fair,
not for us.
I think we've heard, and when we even talked at some of the family days and things like that, people do want connectivity
Yeah, they
to
do.
the state park. So this
Right.
is something that the town, I couldn't give you statistics because we probably haven't done enough outreach, but I do believe that this is something that the town does want.
Yes, we did find that true.
David.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
I agree. I think it is a good goal to connect those two places, the museum and the park. And this sort of is that first step to doing that. We don't have to spend it all. If we do some work, preliminary work ourselves, then maybe we only spend whatever, the first 5,000 or something. But it is a step in that direction, and it also shows that sort of we are getting stuff done. So I mean, I do think that we should, and we have the money, so I think we should get started on this.
Bird in the hand is worth two.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Are we ready for a vote? It being 8:20, I'd say we're ready for a vote.
What's the motion?
The motion is to
Pursue the
pursue the $48,000.
Retain access to the 48 for with the
using the scope of work.
the thought that we will do as a committee some preliminary work to determine our sense of feasibility and field observations. And if we do believe that is something we want to proceed with, then we would engage a third party.
And I think we should make this.
Is there a second so we can
Yeah,
discuss it?
Discussion with CPC,
Yes.
just,
That's a really good point.
Well,
you know, I think that's,
I think so.
Good
We
vote
need
on
to
it.
second it so we can discuss it.
I think you did.
You second his.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think that we.
You want to spend it to make it contingent on my having
From my
discussion with.
perspective, I don't know. I just think it needs to be contingent on that conversation.
Sure, I'll amend it to be contingent for discussion with CPC to validate that this is
Okay,
something that they would support.
so all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Raising your hand, aye.
I'm gonna abstain then, because there was that,
We want to hear you.
well, no, because Scott said that we do the preliminary work before we engage the firm,
Yeah, that's.
which means we got 6 weeks to do that prelim work. And I'm just like, all right, well,
How's that gonna happen?
No, we could.
I'm just trying to be
No,
practical here.
But we can,
That's what he said.
no, I know, but we can engage the firm, we can put the
Yeah.
contract together,
But that's not what the motion said.
contingent and.
He said preliminary work before we engage the firm is the way the motion read.
No, I know the motion was already set. I was explaining my intention behind it.
Okay, so go through the motion again.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'll explain.
I'm sorry, I just,
No, 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 no.
was saying this stuff, and you're like, okay, what's the motion?
Okay,
Just wondering what the motion is.
so the motion is
Keep it short and sweet.
that we will retain access to the 48,400 from the CPC for the purposes of evaluating the East Main Street to Hopkins State Park segment.
Engaging an engineer.
I'm just gonna say, I'm
Just
just gonna keep it that,
Right,
keep it that.
contingent.
Contingent on Peter's discussion with and validation that CPC would in fact continue to support that. Should
Right.
take an alternative
Right.
approach.
Yes,
That gets around.
I'm sorry, can you say contingent? What you said after that, I can't type as fast as you can.
Contingent that Peter's discussion with the CPC chair validates that we can retain access to it
Fill the money under
Okay.
those conditions.
under those conditions. Right.
Okay.
okay, all in favor, signify by saying
And then,
aye.
I'm sorry, can I just ask clarification because I'm still a little confused? So we can retain access to it if CPC validates it, meaning that maybe that rule about having to hire
That's right.
find a company on by April, doesn't, well, may not apply. Well,
We don't need to talk about that. It's the whole,
okay, then I can vote in good conscience.
Right.
I understand what I'm voting on.
okay, all in favor? Aye.
Oh my God, look at that.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was so easy.
An hour and a half later.
I know. That was the longest 15 minutes. Well, we're now in Midwest time, so that actually was only 20 minutes. All right, let's move on to the TCMC. I think we're going to hold off on the discussion of our priorities now that we've already established a priority without talking about priorities, but you know,
I think it's,
so.
one second, let me go to that slide.
On another note, Scott and I actually talked offline about the accounting procedures that we were going to talk,
Oh, yeah.
go over with folks, and we decided to push that off the next meeting. So we'd already pushed that one off the next meeting. Like,
Yep.
we're ahead of it.
Yeah.
So we got 10 minutes back.
Is there a restroom on this floor?
I think there is, or there's one.
Yeah, but it might be behind a locked door, so I have to go downstairs.
I don't think there is there.
There might be one over by that little conference.
Yeah, I think it's, they lock the door at night.
I know I did.
Okay, so accounting procedures will be deferred to next week, next meeting.
Correct. Okay. TCMC, there's more, but I think these are a little less controversial. So go to the next slide, Linda.
I'm sorry. It's distracting me.
It's slow, isn't it?
It's there, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
So the Trails Coordination and Management Committee was primarily designed to address public concerns about trail oversight, primarily about work that I was doing. So when it got established and I was put in as chair, it essentially was the fox guarding the hen house. But it actually worked pretty well. The initial work, we focused on developing guidance for neighborhood interaction on new trails. And I'll get to that a little more later. We worked on several trail networks, signage out on the trails and at trailheads, and then some public outreach. That's included walks, volunteer days, a great library event that Linda and Chris Ann, one of our other members, put on. We've had annual speakers. That's kind of a nice thing to bring folks in. We got our funding from both the town budget and then CPC grants, and a lot of our funding was focused on things like buying wood for bridges. Next slide. So these are the action items with regard to CPA funded projects. We have within two articles, about $107,000 remaining to develop a trail from the Loop Road to Chamberlain Street. That one is ongoing. I actually finally got my version of Chuck's comments on the notice of intent and mapping back off to Chuck so that he can comment to our consultant there, who Beals and Thomas. And we hope to sit down with them in the near future and kind of get final plans together so we can take the notice of intent to Conservation Commission and then get started on the work. The other piece that needs to get done is put together some level of bid document on these stone dust trails. It's been very useful as I've been building them to use local folks, because you can sit there and you hit a field issue, you can deal with it in the field, and we've got local folks who are very willing to do that. There's the trail up at Hughes, for example, was supposed to be just a trail and the classic dig down below the loam, and what you found was that field that you get up to is all ledge. There's a rim of ledge there, so basically the water pond, so we had to put stone in there. You'd never know it looking at it, but he basically just called me up and said, hey, come take a look at this, and we came up with a solution, and off we went. With a little harder in bid documents, but we'll figure out a way to get that done. I would recommend we keep that funding because we're moving on with it, and it's something we want, and it's also part of the deal with the developer of that Chamberlain Street extension, because rather than putting in sidewalks, they're, they're they put in a bit of a trail system over there that once this goes in, will make the rest of it more accessible.
Can I ask a question? If we didn't put in a trail, what would that do to that agreement with the developer? If we did,
They've already put other trails in. So, but this allows the kids to get to school more easily. And so they were both going sort of hand in hand.
Is that what we worked on a couple months ago?
Mhm.
We worked on along the side of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that one. There's another, Chuck, you gotta hold off. Another, CPA funding, about 3,600 available for some drainage work. There's a green pipe that's been sitting out there for a while that has to go in, and there's some other drainage work up that trail. CPA funding of,
So that's like maintenance as opposed to building.
it's finally getting that trail to what it needs to be. It took a while to kind of figure out the drainage and all that stuff. The $5,000 is to put in a trailhead parking on Ash Street by Elmwood Farm. That requires a scenic road hearing and a shade tree hearing. But other than that, I've met out there with the contractor. Small dollars, pretty easy to get that done once we do the planning board meeting. So those are the three that I would recommend we move forward. The final three are about $4,600 that was set aside for specific bridges and boardwalks. And while I think it's a good idea to get our money for bridges and boardwalks from CPC, these specific bridges and boardwalks aren't quite ready for prime time at this point. There's some other stuff going on there. There's a small amount of residual money for trailhead parking at Pond Street. The parking has gone in, signs in. I would recommend we give that back to the CPA. And then there's the route, the $40,000 for engineering for the western route. That required an agreement, or according to the CPC, that required an agreement with one property owner. I thought I was wording in the grant request to not require that property owner, because we don't require that to actually make the trail work. But we can argue all we want. They're not going to give us the $40,000, so we might as well be nice and give it back to them. The way I look at it.
Well, on that, like, when they make that decision, is there a record of how they made that decision?
That particular meeting was not taped. I spent a lot of time looking at it, I know what I said. They were hearing something different. I was probably trying to be a little too cute and not say, hey, if we don't have this, we can still do the route. And
And we could always go back if at some
exactly,
point.
I think that is the route ultimately. I think it's a great route, but it's
So
not for today.
what is the western route? Just,
It goes from Center Trail over across Chamberlain Street Extension, that close to the mouth of the new Chamberlain Street Extension, and then out through the woods behind Charles View, across Danby property, across Ben Chirko property, across Daniel Road, or across Gorman property. That's the question. Then on the town land, and then we'll hook up to the Hughes Trail.
oh, okay.
It's actually, if we put it in, it would allow a parent to drop a kid off by hopping the lumber and have a bike adventure and go over to the Hughes Trail and read a book and wait for them. So I think it's a really cool potential trail, but
But it has private property issues. One private.
it doesn't all, yeah, and you could avoid the private
And you're
property.
gonna run that into that no matter where you go.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
really into
Which is why classified.
So you kind of just
Well, no.
make the best you can do.
So at any rate, that is maybe a future topic. I agree with your recommendations. My question, it's sort of unrelated to any vote, I suppose, but sounds like you're doing a lot of the work with some volunteers of non-committee or trails committee members. I would suggest at some point we spread the duties, but that's
Yeah.
aside from
Yeah, we should have sidewalks here. We should plan some in the future, right?
Plan what?
Sidewalk.
Sidewalks. I mean, certainly the Loop Road to Chamberlain network that's going in would be good to see. That's a,
I'd probably like to see that with you guys. I mean, I've walked there myself,
right,
but I'd like to walk with you guys.
right. Yeah.
Great.
Chuck? Okay, good. Any other thoughts, comments?
Can I ask one final question?
Mhm.
There is a trail or whatever it is. It starts at the entrance to Head of the Charles. It goes between two properties. It goes down into the woods to the school. There was a trail laid out there. And why is he laughing?
I'm not sure.
So again, there's a flashing light there and there's a trail that goes down into the woods and it comes out down on a portion of the loop road. And then at some point that flagged through the center of the loop road. What is that trail?
That's probably the.
That's the old-
connector.
yeah,
What's it?
we've
I couldn't hear you, Ken. Can you just say that again?
That's the old McDermott campus connector.
it's all plotted. But we've never gone so far as to send it out for construction because we just never got that far.
Or you can make it into a class 5 trail.
I was just wondering.
Yeah,
It's-
no, it's there because
So that was done by the
Upper Charles Trail.
Upper Trail. And how does that relate to the Upper Charles Trail? Just help me out here.
Well,
That would
we
go
would come down Center Trail and the thought was to go
Do I have that? on
through the
my
loop
page?
trail and then go through the woods as you presented. We were gonna come out at EMC and then go around the Marathon School and then exit 147 Hayden Road. It was all part of the preliminary plans.
Okay.
It was
It was
wonderful.
actually constructed. Part of it was constructed.
Yeah, we did a little bit.
Right,
But-
so there's a short stretch in the, parallel to McDermott.
That was the eastern part of the eastern route, but then we have the western route as well.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones up scenery.
Ultimately, all of these could be made into, if not the major Upper Charles Trail, but spur trails.
No,
I
that's
mean,
right.
that's the fun, is that we're at the end of the day able to connect all kinds of neighborhoods to the main Upper Charles Trail.
Was
All right.
Chuck trying to talk earlier or did he get in what he wanted? I'm sorry.
We got it enough. He's
Okay.
not raising his hand, so,
Any motions?
Just
I'm looking
quiet,
for, like,
like,
yeah.
Dave and Sean, do either of you have anything to say about this part? Just-
No, it all sounds good. Like the way you've done it.
I move to accept first 3 recommendations, stay with them, and move to return the latter 3.
Second.
second, any discussion? Hearing none, ready for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous and so carries. All right.
The average speed is increasing.
Yeah.
Don's making me look back. One try at a motion.
All right.
That's what it was. It's all Jack. It's not me.
All right, so it is now about 8:40. I said item 7 is going away. Trail priorities and master plan. Did everyone get a chance to look at what I sent over?
The Excel list or the.
Yeah, Excel list. Linda took, in 10 minutes, why don't you explain kind of what you did? Put that up and sort of, and then,
Do I have it?
Is it, it's in, it was, you sent it out to the agenda? It was. just-
Yeah, it was attached to one of the emails.
Of course, I don't have that with me,
what, you don't have what you did?
because I'm stupid. Sorry, I just didn't think.
Okay.
You have access to the emails?
I don't, I mean, I had to log in and then Word and, I'm sorry.
All right, bottom
I
line,
can try.
Here, I'll give it to you.
that you were,
The thing is, I don't have
Well,
it down here
I
necessarily.
don't think we need it. I think
No.
the bottom line is that you were trying to find a way to prioritize some of this stuff. Based on what we've seen with one item, I think prioritization may take a bit of time, so it's probably a good homework exercise for folks to think about, taking that away and
Did you keep my numbers in there?
Or did you clear them out?
No, I can remember that.
Oh,
Which were, I didn't see any priorities there. I just saw
good.
categories.
I think, yeah. Well, I had categories and just the one I sent.
Apparently the second tab had an alternate, had another way of looking at it,
Mhm.
like,
Okay,
so maybe look at tab 2. The problem is you'll see what I think of things and I would never want my opinion to sway yours, so just ignore my priorities.
okay.
Can we have a little bit of discussion on it so people can think about it between now and next meeting? Because I thought the work was great. Thank you for both you guys, and you did sway me. No, I'm kidding. I think my takeaway, again, everybody's food for thought, but my takeaway was that the groupings fell into categories like community outreach was a high priority. So I'd like to see us in the next meeting or two, establish one high priority action item and start moving on that. And the other one was, around, I think there was maintenance was the second one. It was sort of a broader category. So, I mean, there was also a third that I can't recall off the top of my head because I was also looking for the document on my phone. I didn't bring my computer. But my thinking is that if we took it where they tended to cluster, which were 3 areas, and then as a group determined if those areas like community outreach and maintenance, came out as 2 high priorities, then we pick initiatives or first priority in each one of those. That would allow us to start moving the ball forward. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, giant map.
I just don't have the second tab. That's all. Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm giant map.
Is it too late to add to this list?
That's not the view I was thinking.
No, I don't.
No, it's not. It's the
Okay.
Yeah.
second tab.
But they tended to cluster in 3 buckets. And my point was, I think that reinforced again and over, and Sean said this a number of times, it reinforced kind of our charter, our charge. But also it really floated to the top, community outreach in particular.
Mhm.
And whether we looked at those line items and said, let's pick one of those to start with, I'm not necessarily recommended. I'm saying that we, as a group, should maybe next meeting discuss as a priority, if everybody agrees, of course, community outreach, and what's the number one first thing we should do? So we could be pinpoint focusing for outreach, what's the first thing we should do, right? Then maybe focus that and have someone drive that. There's my
Thoughts? Yeah,
timer.
thoughts on it, prioritization?
I agree with what you just said.
Okay.
I mean, I just think there's obviously been some turbulence around trails in town. And I think there's a new trails committee.
Trails, trees and trash.
Huh?
Always controversial. Trails, trees and trash, always controversial.
Right, right. Well, anyway, I
Why
guess,
did you pick up trash last week?
Steve,
Oh, no.
Going down a rabbit.
I just think while we start talking to people
Mhm.
would be a really good first step. So they knew there's a new committee and,
Mhm. There's no new approach.
I think it makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, effectively, we did set a bit of a priority already today, which was done probably not the way priority should be set. There was no context. But we did what we did, but I do think that makes sense.
Mhm. David, thoughts?
Yeah, I like the categories. I certainly like focusing on one item and finishing that one before going to the next one. Those are my thoughts. I didn't know that there was any priority set on this list, but I can take. a
No,
look.
no, there wasn't.
It's on the
Right.
second.
When we did our-
the Second. tab.
Sorry, when we did our exercise, you noticed when you look at the sheet, there was some clustering.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I saw you probably grouped those clusters when you massaged it. Well, one thing I noticed that was missing that I really enjoy is any sort of mention of cross-country skiing and how that would fit into the existing trail system. Maybe there are certain trails that may need a little bit of tweaking, like over on Fruit Street that have sort of cross-country side trails that go around the steeper hills.
Yeah.
So,
I think, so to me.
maybe just to add that,
To me, the item that said something for everyone would
Yeah.
include that.
right,
It could spell it out as an example. but-
yes, yeah, that's where I thought it would fit as well.
Ben?
Chuck, was Chuck trying to say something?
No.
Larry gets
Who's
the-
talking to?
Oh, okay. Well, with regards to community outreach, I do think that that's an important thing, and I'm wondering, maybe we should think about how we want to start engaging parts of the community, and as I see, we've got 2 key places that we probably ought to revisit community outreach, one of them being close to Legacy Farms North, close to the Marathon Museum, which I think is, there's also people on the other side of Legacy Farms North, closer to the dam. But another whole place is close to the Chamberlain Street. I know you guys have contacted them again, but those people, some people just bought in recently, and probably they need to be contacted again.
Yep.
So I was just thinking about.
John?
Well, we put together this list. Some of those things in the list are actionable and some of them more are conceptual.
Exactly.
Right.
It is.
And so it's kind of tough to prioritize something that's conceptual versus actionable.
I agree.
And I think, Lynn, you made that point, but if we can hone in on the ones that are conceptual and put action items associated with them, then you take my perspective would be, you would take all those action items and you put them on a 4x4 grid. Low effort, high return, low return, right? And so anything that's, low effort, high return, to me, those are priorities. That's the low hanging fruit. That's the stuff that you can knock it out of the park. And if you want to do community outreach, be like, oh, we're going to participate in XYZ days and get some feedback, low effort, high return, So that would be, I would prioritize that.
Have a person at Polyarts, for example.
Exactly. Just as an example, right? But that has to be actionable.
Right.
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 You can't just say public outreach. Well, that's not actionable.
Yep. Jane?
I've always found it difficult to go out and try and invite people to come to our meetings. They just don't respond unless it's a conversation that's going to personally involve them. So they're not really interested. I found that, what was effective is members of the committee going to other committees and boards and speaking to them. Because they know a lot of people and then they start talking and the press picks it up. That's one way to start getting the conversation going.
Linda?
Well, it seems like we're focusing on community outreach somehow by default, except for your comment, Sean, which I really liked what you said. And I guess as that being my favorite part of why I'm on this committee, I have to make a comment about it, which is, I think we want to have something to talk about, whether it's something that we just completed, something we did, like that's a good way to start, like we're doing something. So like taking the public outreach or whatever you want to call it, turning it into an action item. One action item is to start talking about something that we've done that's been finished or that people care about.
Right, even if it's just a flag trail, for example.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's a great segue because I missed one of my slides.
Oh.
Which, no, that's fine. I forgot about it. We did the quick vote and it went great and we were done. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got a whole nother slide. So, and this is more again for background information for those of you guys who haven't been involved. These are other action steps from the TCMC, so other projects we've worked on. Yes.
Just a question, do you intend to end at 9?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
I just need to get.
Oh,
my
we can
phone.
get you a ride, or somebody can give you a ride home, John.
No, it's fine, my wife can pick me up.
Okay.
That's just down off, Oliver 35, it's fine. She can-
Oliver?
Yeah,
I don't mind driving. I'll drive you. I go right near there.
You're going towards Westboro?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So you did get your license back.
Anyway,
I'm gonna sit next to you next.
I like it.
so trail, yeah, that's why we'll start assigning seats. Trail network work that we've done, the center trail behind Center School to Elmwood, we have about a $6,000 endowment from a athletic brewing company, Ales to Trails program, as well as $2,000 from a neighbor over there. We need some signs back there, some trail markers. There's a neat little trail going down to this big rock monolith. I call it Whaleback Trail. That would be nice to have. Some drainage work. Fruit Street, Pratt Fields, we could use additional signage out there. Berry Acres is another one we've been doing work on. And then obviously Hughes and the new Coelho Trail, what this weekend is the volunteer day there. Trail development guidance. I brought that or provided that, I think at like the first meeting and, That's guidance we put together on a new trail, or we're upgrading a trail to do outreach with neighbors, so that could be upgraded to say Trails Committee versus TCMC. Website development, Linda's been working on trail signs on roads. That's something that is both the public outreach, but very actionable and I think very visible. So that might be something that we should probably at one of our more recent upcoming meetings, vote on Linda's design versus some other design for what goes on the roads, and then get some ordered and out there.
Do we have any, issues in needing, permission to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so how do we deal with?
It has to go, I think, DPW, so Carrie is not a fan, but
She's,
that's okay.
Why?
She doesn't want a lot of signs, extra signs on the road. They get stuck putting extra signs up all the time. So, but I think we can. I started negotiating with her on it because there's some like handicap signs that have been, you know, at the same location for the 25 years they've been in town. And it's like, the person is long gone. We can take that sign down. There's a few others around. So I think there's a way to play that game. Final other miscellaneous things. There's the shed renovation on Hughes. Center Trail equipment. There's some fitness equipment that we got through a grant that actually the Trails Club has, but we've been kind of working hand in hand with them. And then there's the Center Trail border protection, sort of a reminder that there's always going to be sort of upcoming things we have to kind of pay attention to. So even though, yeah, it's good to get things planned, action items and move them forward, there may be things that shift what we need to do. I've been working with Chuck Joseph on the Legacy Farms land because Roy McDowell wants to no longer have to manage that. And so we're looking at ways of making that work for the town. So if that happens, then we'll have to potentially have to jump on that for something that would be getting an additional, 500 acres that available for trails.
It's fine,
All
ready
good.
to turn it over.
I go back to,
How would that apply to this first plan we looked
they
at?
could,
We wouldn't have to go to Roy McDowell to get permission.
make it.
Go to Hall.
Okay,
One less property owner
okay,
Yeah.
to deal
right,
with.
oh, well, okay, so that would make it easier then.
Right. Right. But then, no, all that land has a restrictive covenant on it versus a conservation restriction. So it's actually pretty well protected. Yes.
that was good. So I go back to what Sean said. I really like it. So I'm echoing that. I think a great next step for us would be to do the 4 quadrant.
Yeah.
For action items.
We have to create action items of the concept.
Correct action items, the ones that are conceptuals or higher level are not action oriented.
Mhm.
Agree with that. My point that I kicked off, I just want to see if you guys also agree with that, is I think categorically, everybody grabbed onto what I said, but community outreach. So I think categorically, because it's got a lot to cover. It could take us 30 hours to go through everything. So maybe categorically, we agree on the first category or second category to focus on, to do the 4 quadrants within that. And then maybe ultimately, when we go through 5 categories or whatever, I think there's 8 categories, go through, then eventually we have all the low hanging fruit, hopefully. I don't know how many there'd be, and then maybe that's what we focus on. I don't know. But I'm not trying to get too prescriptive, but I'm saying, like, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that if we start going with low hanging fruit and we have, 30 items, I still am advocating community outreach is one of the first. Whatever that action item may be.
Mhm.
So, but Sean, I think that's a great suggestion. Love it.
So thoughts on taking this home and at least thinking about potential action items for each? So for community outreach, for example, what is that, what are your thoughts on what that could be?
First one.
And on community outreach, there's a couple people, one is, I'd like to tell people we're here and what we're doing.
Right.
I'd also like to get an understanding of what people think about what we're doing. And
Yep.
Yeah,
And I'd also like, for example, that the Chamberlain Street development of, multi-million-dollar houses seem very in tune to creating a trail system. I'd really like to, in my own head, figure out why that why that fit with the developer to do that, because in some cases, there's been real opposition to trails, and try and understand that.
It was timing.
Like, right, but I
Like,
think
in the-
also how, what the,
Development.
I'd like to understand how that, what the rhetoric around that is and how it worked, and then one of, I'd like, I would like, really like, and I've talked to a realtor, that sit down, with the realtor, sit down, and ask them, what do people, when people come here to buy houses, what are they looking for? And how do they just get us, so even one sense is to tell them what we do and that we're here, but also to understand what their thinking process is about trails. Do they, for example, do they use trails to sell property? Or if there's a trail, do they not tell anybody about it? I mean, it goes different ways, but I'd like to get a sense of what that is, or particularly how we could help them enhance what a trail, why trails are important to people. So it goes
Well, I
both
mean,
ways.
for example, talking with Chuck Joseph, one of his thoughts is, Hopkinton we ought to be looking at labeling ourselves as a walk, run, ride community. And coming up with, some little mantra like that says, hey, here's what we are, here's what we have to offer.
There were just a minor comment. One, I moved to Hopkinton. Work. I mean, I saw enough of them and really that was why. And then the other reason, the other thing was there was an article in the Boston Globe Sunday paper one time about Cameron Woods, that Whisper Way development.
Yeah.
The first line was about the trails that you can walk through. So that's just anecdotal, not a realtor, but
No, I'd like to see what they have to say.
yeah.
Alrighty, so think about possible action items. I mean, one of the things for community outreach is, do we want to put an article in the local paper, but I mean, I think we can all come up with our own. And the last one, and then we're gonna move to adjourn.
I
So,
don't
you're
I
a
don't
little
have
bit.
fleshed out ideas to how to accomplish this, but there's a little parking lot off Legacy Farms North, right? The gas pipeline. I was thinking maybe we can hold a mini event there to, I don't know, offer food of some sort. And just use that as the means to, get people in the community to talk to us, because otherwise I don't, going door to door, it doesn't work so well. They're not there. And you're getting in their face. What you want it to be is where they are. We've spoken about this. We want to come to where they are, but we want it to be something that's on their terms too, as to the time a little bit.
Yeah, and I
don't
think,
know whether it's a real possibility, but I've really only got my word.
and I know I'm standing in the way too, so I'll be real quick, but I don't know if it was Dave or Sean or someone, one of the meetings was talking about engaging with the businesses around town. So that's also a way to get people talking about us, sponsorship, things like that. So that's a form of community outreach, just a different way to go about it, but something to consider.
I think everyone else.
No, it wasn't me, but, sponsor of mine.
What's that?
Sponsor of mine.
Sponsor now, but it's also, having them talk to their patrons,
Yeah.
a source of funding. If we, during, call it, we could hide something on a trail, have $1,000 that someone could find it, whatever.
I think come up with those ideas, write them down, and
Yeah.
bring them back and go through them next
Yeah.
time. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. Good.
Thank you, guys.
So,
I said the trail season.
day is 9 o'clock.
Connection with trails, yes.
Yeah, beginning of the month is going quick.
I gotta think about, so I get the more, that was great. It's still, it's been below freezing the whole time. They got 3 feet of powder. Sure.
Ice.
No, powder on the cross-country course,
Oh, wow.
ski trails. It's all.
My granddaughter.
Oh,
I went out yesterday, Monday.
Oh, here, yeah. No, it's horrible here, but up there, it's all powder.
It was actually beautiful here on Monday.
Monday, and I went to survey.
I was